Alright, hi everyone, welcome back to another podcast episode. Today we have a variety of subjects. First of all, the Blendstream website was just given a soft release. I don't know how it's gone because I've literally just recorded that release video. So if you haven't already destroyed it, then I'm sure it's up and you've had some thoughts about it. Maybe Curtis in the future will send a signal down the timeline and I'll get some precognition on how that went. But today we're going to talk about a few things. So my experiments with shorts, a little note about Patreon, and perhaps we'll talk about the child prodigy problem because that's just come up on my Discord server. So let's start off with shorts. So naturally, as you may know, if you've been with us in our recent episodes discussing my OptiFlow scheduling for my daily work, I've been trying to record a short every day or a couple of shorts every day. I haven't managed to do it every day, but I'm still trying. Something that can be placed on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. So you may have noticed in your subscription feed that on this channel and on the Curtis Holt main channel, I've been releasing a few shorts. I've also given it a try as an Instagram reel and on TikTok and on Twitter as well, where I talked about Martin Kleckner's New Heroes of Bronze short film. I found out some interesting things while releasing these shorts, okay? Regardless of your opinion on shorts, I'm sure you might find this interesting, because I know there are some of you out there with very strong opinions. But you can't deny it's the way that a lot of content is moving in this day and age. I'm of course not a huge fan of the vertical aspect ratio, especially not on massive screens like this, but as a content creator it's something I need to keep in mind. And the reason I was hesitant to do short content before was because though I don't mind doing it in addition to regular videos, I didn't want it to disrupt the regular content. So I'm very happy that shorts were given their own section on channel pages now, so they don't get in the way of regular videos. Okay, but if you're interested in making shorts, one of the things YouTube does is it tests your videos against a test audience as well as your regular subs, and I have proof of this now. So I'm going to show you two shorts on my second channel here. There's a productivity tip for finishing tasks and stay quiet when learning new skills. The second one has a bit more of an, I don't know, dramatic title, so maybe you'd expect it to do a bit better if it was like, put in an A/B test for people to click on. Same-ish thumbnails, right? So there's nothing too much that separates them. They're both pretty similar shorts. But if you look over at the views, despite only being one day apart, they have a huge difference in view count. That's because the very first short that I made for this channel was given a wider test audience. And let me show you the analytics. This is something I've never seen on YouTube before. Look at that graph. It's just a cliff straight up. Immediately after being released, it was like test audience, then just regular subscribers, because this is obviously a small channel, 2-point-something thousand subs. This part of the graph here, this very slow slope upwards, this is regular subscribers taking a look. This first bit is where the short was thrown into like homepage or YouTube app recommendations to a wider audience. That's what a test case looks like, where it's just an inorganic straight cliff upwards. And you can see that here in the real-time stats as well. In the first hour, we got 748 of the 866 views. The second short's much more interesting because this one had a very small test audience, absolutely tiny. You can see that here at the very beginning, first hour 14, and then carries on. So this is regular subscriber performance. Way different. So obviously, maybe the question of fairness comes into mind. Why does one short get a huge audience to start with and another short gets almost nothing? I don't know. I don't have an answer to that. But I just think it's interesting that the very first short that I made on this channel got a much wider audience. So that's an interesting test case there. And I know that that is from outside of my regular audience because one thing that always happens when your YouTube videos get fed into the algorithm's favor and they start appearing in homepage recommendations for a larger number of people is you start getting weird comments appearing. And they're weird comments because they're from, how do I say it in a nice way? I don't think there is a nice way to say it. If your specialized tight-knit community like Blender is the cream of the crop, they would be the crop of the crop, which may also include some bot comments. So let me have a little look at this. So I put this post on Twitter, tagged it NPC dialogue, because literally within that first hour of that short being amplified to the wider YouTube audience, I got one comment from a very bot looking name that said, "Your nails are colored." That's it. A very weird comment, like just objective, not even a question, just "Your nails are colored." Someone else comes along and says, "Yeah, that's all I got from this, but not all his nails are the same color. I'm not even sure I know why. Is this what people do now? How very odd." And then the original user commented again in very chatbotty text saying, "It's quite odd and a bit rather peculiar indeed. In fact, I'm in concession with you also, as I ought to know the reason they do this." Like, what the hell? Now this is probably a real person, right? But I thought it was weird because I started seeing more of these usernames pop up at user dash and then a random string of text. And some of the comments written by those user variations are very weird. But this only happened in that moment that the short was being amplified. So that's how you know that you're getting into the wider space, because you start getting weird content come in. Okay, taking a look over my Instagram, one of the shorts I put out on my main channel as well, 2,244 views, pretty good. That same short over on the main channel, 2,100 views. Interesting that on Instagram, it gets the same amount of views despite me only having a following of about 6,000, whereas on YouTube, I have 140,000 and it gets the same amount. So that goes to show that Instagram seems to be pushing it more. But again, I did also get a stronger test sample boost on this short than I did on the second one as well. That's something I noticed. So maybe if anyone else wants to make shorts for YouTube, just consider that your first short might get a stronger boost. So interestingly, going over to another platform, TikTok, that I don't have a very big following on, the short only has 236 views. So I just think it's interesting. I've just been doing comparisons here using the short content and seeing how it performs on different platforms. You can kind of start to see where the algorithm is more inclined to promote things and where things are a bit more fair or unfair. Maybe that's interesting information for someone, I don't know. But there's probably a few of you watching this going, I hate shorts. I don't want to listen to this chapter. Why is he talking about shorts? Because if you're going to live in the content space, you have to understand the content space. It doesn't matter if you agree with the type of content, knowledge is power nonetheless. So I think it's important to do experiments, gather information, see how the different platforms could benefit you. The variability of short performance across different platforms tells me, okay, it's worth investing time in because we are definitely getting some organic engagement and views across the different platforms. However, given the wide variability in how they perform across the platforms and especially on YouTube, given how unpredictable that test sample is and how unfair it is between different shorts, it's not a good idea investing a huge amount of time into them. But that's fine because these shorts take a very short amount of time to create. So that's what I've learned from this experimentation. It's given me a better idea for how much time to invest into them. Yes, it's worth doing. No, it's not worth investing much time. So you might wonder about subscriber growth with shorts. In the Heroes of Bronze short I did on the main channel, you can see that there was an initial boost and then it settled off with the regular subscriber performance, plus 6 subscribers in total. If I click on this, you can see all of them came from that initial boost. So if you're not getting the shorts pushed out to a wider audience, then you're not going to see any growth. In fact, you might see negative subscriber growth by people that are annoyed of seeing it in the subfeed. So it's only really worth it in the end if some of your shorts do get pushed out to a wider audience. Given that, as we've seen between the different short comparisons, that it's so unfair between the two, given how much that one gets pushed out more than the other, that makes the worth it factor a bit more questionable. Obviously, compare this to a video like 9 new Blender features coming in 2023, and I'll block out the revenue here. The subscriber count is much larger, and you can see that it's much more progressive over time, rather than an initial boost and then just flat out. Okay, so coming back to our discussion about the OptiFlow technique and kind of optimizing your performance, your content production on a daily basis, or just trying to like find a way to maximize your potential if you're feeling ambitious on a particular day. I've noticed an interesting psychological benefit to doing this. Obviously, when you start producing a lot more content, the one thing that crosses your mind, first of all, is burnout. You're going to be forcing yourself to do a lot more content. It's going to be harder. That's not necessarily the case from what I've found. I found that this beginning of the day here is monumental. Even if I push my winding down phase way back in the day, so long as I manage to record something at the beginning of the day, my output has still like practically doubled or tripled compared to what I was doing before, because without having a schedule, you don't realize how your time compresses down, like subconsciously, when you're just wasting the time watching videos or something. You don't realize how much free time you actually had, just because of how you compartmentalize the memory. So what this has actually done is this kind of helps me visualize or even break up those time folding moments. So you start to actually realize how much free time you did have to do productive things in between all of your regular relax periods. So that's one benefit. Another benefit I found is that I'm obsessing less over performance now. I probably still will obsess over performance for main channel videos, but especially for the things like the second channels and all of that, likes on Twitter posts, likes on Instagram posts, whatever, I'm caring less about it. The reason is because you know there's always something more coming. So actually, like having a waterfall, a flow of content, especially if you haven't stressed yourself out too much about the creation process, but having a flow where there's always something to come makes you feel a lot less anxious about the performance of any particular thing. So that's another good reason. Now, obviously, this has been like one of the most productive months in a long time for me. Unfortunately, I did kind of violate one of my rules. Last year, I said, okay, next year, you're going to focus more on paid products because we're going to need to get that working up because we're going to be moving into the new studio, renovations going on. We need a good buffer zone. And also, like I said in the previous videos, I'm interested in starting new life changes, driving, etc. I'm also going to see a neurologist at the beginning of next month, and that's going to cost a bit of money. So I had this rule that was like, focus on paid products for January. And I broke that rule because we did the Blender Cinema. And then I also started BuyGen V10, which is obviously a free add-on, but it does open the way to like more paid components as well. And then I've been doing all these podcasts and the channel's not even monetized. So yeah, I did a bad thing in accordance to that rule. But what this does is it generates a lot of community goodwill. So that's a good thing. And we have done a lot lot of stuff this month. We've done a lot of videos on this second channel. We've encouraged the creation of new software projects as well. I even mentioned WinFlow in the last one, but Blendstream's been a really big one for this month. I think collectively we've learned a lot during this period. But the thing is, we're running and producing so much stuff and kind of like learning to optimize ourselves. And then I look over at Patreon and it's a very mixed story because we've had a couple of people, you're probably watching, that have given a really wonderful amount of support on Patreon this month. Absolutely fantastic. And then I look at my notifications and I see like other people leaving the Patreon with the exit reason of Curtis Holt wasn't as active as I expected. And whenever I read that, I'm like, I have been very active. You're just looking in the wrong place. Or, alternatively, which is probably more the case, I just haven't been producing as many videos for the main channel as people expected. But I'm trying to. I've got loads planned, loads in the concepting phases. It's just this bit. I'm figuring out like all this other stuff in the process, but it's just this bit for the main channel. It's really hard prepping them because they have to be a certain quality. And given at the turning point of the end of the year, I actually started losing subscribers. Granted, it was only about 4, but I have to be very careful with what ones I actually put on the main channel now because the whole growth factor can just like turn around like that. It's crazy. I did a post about that on my Patreon at the end of October, I think, between October and November. It became apparent that it was much safer to do regular predictable videos at wider intervals than it was to do less predictable videos at shorter intervals. I'm glad to say we got growth back on track again, and that was also helped by, other community members, Ducky, Southern Shofty, Blender Made Easy recently as well. I'm going to show you something and I will probably need to block out certain parts of the screen, but this is subscriber growth on my main channel over the last 90 days, and you can see everything is below average. Now obviously the end of the year is a pretty bad period anyway, but here we're looking at 10 subscribers moving out to like 50s, whatever. Ooh, 70, good day. Oh, 12, that's not good. Coming down to December, 9, -4 on the last day of the year. This month, thanks to other members of the Blender community, we've been getting that growth back, and also thanks to the careful placement of videos, we're doing alright. We'll probably come back down again, but that's just how it is. So I had someone in my Discord server bring up the subject of like feeling insecure when seeing other people post really cool content on like Twitter and other social platforms, and also the proclivity in the community to kind of celebrate young, extremely talented people, or even when that happens, people come out of the woodwork and go, oh yeah, well I was doing this at that age, and like showing off all really cool stuff. And how do you like not feel insecure about it? Do we even like that behavior? Like general posturing on social media and stuff like that. But it's an interesting conversation, and we kind of spoke about it in a really early video on this second channel. I just wanted to reiterate and share something that I learned about child genius behavior, or child prodigies. That there's a known phenomenon, and it's been studied and measured, that people who have an excellent demonstration of skill at a young age tend to drop off. It's quite common for them to lose relevancy or to become average or below average in that same skill later in life. Why is that? I think it's again to do with validation and relaxation. Imagine you're a young kid and you're pretty good at something, maybe by your own intuition, or maybe your parents have kind of forced you into it and said, oh, he's a born genius. You're given a lot of praise. Maybe you kind of learn that you can only get that praise by try-harding in this particular field. But it also teaches you can relax. Because the human brain isn't really keyed into hyper-focusing on something 100% of the time. You feel like, okay, maybe I don't need to try as hard because I'm already really good at this thing because everyone tells me I'm good at it. The thing is, when you relax, you give other people time to catch up. And there's also the other factor, that anxiety plays really hard into this desire for validation. When you get a bit older, after you've been given a lot of praise, the idea of being seen as weak or being embarrassed if you don't perform as well as you used to be able to, or maybe if you perform worse than everyone else around you, is a very dread-inducing idea. So the best way to avoid putting yourself in an uncomfortable position where you could become embarrassed is by not trying at all. Everyone already thinks I'm a genius at this, so why don't I just, not prove them wrong? I just won't try again, and then everyone will keep thinking I'm a genius, because if I do try and then I fail, well, they'll all think I'm stupid. So that leaves all this time in between where they're not developing. And eventually, as they get older, everyone else catches up and they haven't continued developing their skills. So you can call that the Prodigy Problem. If you've ever seen like these TV shows where these parents have forced their kids on and basically showed, oh, look how genius my kid is, and then you never hear about them ever again. Or you get all these newspaper articles about, wow, this kid invented this really cool thing and then this company bought it and he's going to be the next Mark Zuckerberg, the next Bill Gates, and then you never hear from them ever again. And then, occasionally it happens in our community as well. You get this really cool looking thing pop up from, wow, this artist is only 11 or 12 years years old, and you never hear from them ever again. So obviously there's a lot of complexity and nuance to it for every individual. But just coming into this conversation that was brought up on Discord, how do you not feel like insecure when everyone's showing off what they were doing at a young age? Wow, look how cool that is. Well, I always keep this thing in the back of my head that celebrating extremely high skill always has a dark side to it. It kind of reminds me how when you look at someone's Instagram profile, maybe this is hypocritical, right? If you take a look at mine, that people always present this optimum, this is my best life style, you know? And when people present their artwork as well, they're not showing you like all the worst parts of their artwork and the entire process of them making really cringy models and sculpts up until their perfect piece. When you look at someone who's receiving an intense amount of validation for being a prodigy, for standing out above everyone else, there's always more below the surface. And even the act of providing and receiving that validation can put a lot of pressure on someone and trigger anxiety-related motivation drops later on that can lead to stagnation. And depending on like the age, the community, the development environment, a skill level which could ultimately in the end be measured as just average, just like everyone else. The universe is quite homogeneous. Things don't tend to stay way above or way below grade for too long. So what I might do, and I haven't actually done this before on one of these videos, is play my old self speaking about this subject. So this was the 31st of March 2021, and we'll see how much we can resonate with. So let me just turn on the desktop audio. Here we go. Now we can point to any number of reasons, for example, kind of shielded parenting and excessive praise, leading people to be afraid of failure, therefore not trying certain things in case they fail, therefore keeping themselves kept in a box, not really doing anything, not really improving, giving other people time to catch up, and then they basically become the average. But funnily enough, I started reading a book recently called Originals by Adam Grant. Right at the beginning of the book, on page 9, I stumbled across a section where they talk exactly about this. So I'm going to read you a quote that Adam's written here because it's extremely relevant. He says, "We assume that what gifted kids have in book smarts, they lack in street smarts. Or they have the intellectual chops, they must lack the social, emotional, and practical skills to function in society. When you look at the evidence, though, this explanation falls short. Less than a quarter of gifted children suffer from social and emotional problems. The vast majority are well adjusted, as delightful at cocktail parties as in spelling bees. Although child prodigies are often rich in both talent and ambition, what holds them back from moving the world forward is that they don't learn to be original. As they perform in Carnegie Hall, win the Science Olympics, and become chess champions, something tragic happens. Practice makes perfect, but it does not make new. The gifted learn to play magnificent Mozart melodies and beautiful Beethoven symphonies, but never compose their own original scores. They focus their energy on consuming existing scientific knowledge, not producing new insights. They conform to the codified rules of established games rather than inventing their own rules or their own games. All along the way, they strive to earn the approval of their parents and the admiration of their teachers. Research demonstrates that it's the most creative children who are the least likely to become the teacher's pet." So I think Adam really hit a nail on the head with that one. Because when we're looking and talking about child prodigy... So that's interesting. I forgot about the original perspective there. That not only do you keep yourself in a box skill development wise, but it also kind of inhibits creativity. So I guess that's another angle to keep in mind, that when someone's receiving immense amounts of validation for being good at a particular field, you can kind of imagine that validation like forming like a thin film around their comfort zone that kind of locks them in tight. Oh, people like this particular thing, so I need to keep doing this instead. And experimentation is risk, because what if people don't like it? I feel like I've always been kind of anti that attitude, which is why we do so many things that breach not just the 3D art space, but also now the real world space. I suppose Project Providence would be an example of that. And the thing is, not everyone likes that, which is, I guess, probably why we go back to the, the Patreon thing about Curtis Hub wasn't as active as I expected, because it just depends on where you're looking. Anyway, my time is actually up for the recording phase of this day. I'm about 16 minutes over, so I will need to cut this off now. But yeah, hopefully you found this interesting. This was a little bit more rambly, maybe less structured than before. But yeah, I hope you're all doing well. Of course, as usual, leave any thoughts below. If you made it to the end, put a brain emoji in the comments. I love you all, and I will see you next time.